My husband accused me of cheating, while I was still in the hospital bed holding our newborn. You won't believe who he thought the father was, or what happened when the test results came in. I'll never forget the way he looked at me in the delivery room. I thought it was love. Exhausted, aching, and drenched in sweat, I reached for my husband with tears of joy in my eyes, expecting the same in return. But what I got instead was confusion. His eyes scanned our baby's face like he was trying to solve a puzzle. His smile didn't reach his eyes. And from that moment on, I felt the ground under me begin to shift. Our son, James, was born 3 weeks ago. He's perfect, full head of dark hair, strong little lungs, and the softest chubby cheeks I've ever seen. I fell in love the second they placed him in my arms. But my husband, Matt? Something in him changed. And the worst part is, he didn't even try to hide it. It started small, I guess. He stopped calling James our son and instead started using his name a lot, your baby or James. I chalked it up to stress or sleep deprivation. Becoming a new parent is overwhelming, right? But then I caught him staring at James's face more than once, with this strange expression, like suspicion wrapped in disbelief. A few days after we brought James home, Matt got really quiet while we were sitting on the couch. I was nursing and humming to the baby, and he just blurted it out. Has anyone ever told you he looks a lot like Chris? I laughed, because I honestly thought he was joking. Chris is Matt's best friend. His best man. Our neighbor. Practically family. He's tall, dark-haired, charming, sure. But he's also married with a baby of his own and has been in our lives for years. I didn't even know how to respond. What are you talking about? I asked, thinking maybe I misheard. He didn't smile. I'm just saying, people might start to talk. James has Chris's eyes. Same exact shade. And the chin too. That was the moment I realized something was wrong. Not just with Matt, with our marriage. From that day on, he pulled away. Emotionally, physically, completely. He'd get up and leave the room when I fed James. He stopped touching me. He barely looked at either of us unless it was with a distant, guarded stare. I tried to talk to him about it. I asked if he was okay, if the stress of parenthood was getting to him, if there was something I could do to help. But he kept brushing me off, saying everything was fine. Until a few nights ago, when I finally couldn't take it anymore and pushed for the truth. And that's when he said it, the thing that shattered everything. I don't think he's mine. My whole body went cold. I laughed at first, a shaky, nervous, "Are you serious?" laugh. Matt, are you actually accusing me of cheating on you? He looked me dead in the eye and said, I don't know. But I can't stop thinking about it. Every time I look at him, I see Chris. I broke. I cried harder than I ever have in my life. Not because of the accusation, but because it came from the person I trusted more than anyone else. I'd spent 9 months carrying our baby, throwing up for weeks, feeling every kick, every cramp, every moment of excitement and terror, and here he was, looking at our son like a stranger, and blaming me for it. I asked him if he really thought I would do that to him. Cheat. With his best friend of all people. He didn't answer. That silence said more than any words could have. I've been living in limbo ever since. Chris doesn't know, at least, I don't think he knows. But Matt's been distant with him too. He canceled their usual Sunday basketball game. Ignored his texts. When Chris and his wife dropped off a gift for James last week, Matt pretended to be asleep in the bedroom. I had to sit there awkwardly, smiling and thanking them while trying not to fall apart. I've offered a paternity test. I did it the same night Matt said those words. I was shaking, but I said, if you really think this, if you truly can't believe me, then let's get a test. Prove it. I have nothing to hide. He nodded. Cold. Distant. Like he was preparing himself to be right. I should feel angry. I should be furious that my husband would think so little of me, that he'd believe I'd cheat, lie, destroy our lives, all because our son happened to resemble someone else. But honestly, I just feel heartbroken. I thought bringing a child into the world would bring us closer. I thought we'd spend sleepless nights in awe of this little human we created. I thought we'd be a team. Instead, I'm breastfeeding alone at 3 a.m. while my husband sleeps on the couch, convinced our baby isn't his. I don't know how we come back from this. And I don't know what will happen when the test results arrive. But I do know one thing, no matter what Matt chooses to believe, James is my son. I know exactly where he came from. And I will fight for him, even if it means fighting the man I once thought would never turn against me. The day the envelope came, I couldn't breathe. I was standing in the kitchen, rocking James in his little sling, when I saw it peeking out of the mailbox, a plain white envelope from the lab. Matt had scheduled the test in secret. I knew it was coming, but I didn't expect it so soon. I just stood there, frozen, with my hand on the cold metal of the mailbox, staring at our names printed together on the label like we were some sort of legal case. When I brought it inside, Matt didn't say a word. He just took it from my hand, walked into the living room, and sat down like he was opening a utility bill. I stood there gripping the edge of the countertop, watching his fingers tremble as he slid the paper out. His face went blank, completely unreadable. "Well?" I asked. My voice was shaking, but I forced it out. He didn't look at me. "It's mine," he said quietly. A pause. Just 2 words. Then he stood up and walked straight into the bedroom without another glance in my direction. I wish I could tell you I felt relief in that moment. That I laughed, that I cried tears of joy, that he came running back to me with apologies and promises. But I didn't feel anything. I just stood there, holding our baby, staring at the closed bedroom door. The next few days were awkward and quiet. He didn't say much. I didn't push. He slept in the bed again, but turned away from me. He held James more, but never looked me in the eye. And then, one night, I snapped. It was after James's 2 a.m. feeding. I came back into the bedroom, sat down on the edge of the bed, and said, "So are we going to talk about it? Or are we just going to pretend none of this happened?" Matt turned over slowly, rubbing his face like he was hoping to stall long enough to change the subject. "I was wrong," he said finally. "Yeah," I said, "you were." He sat up and ran both hands through his hair. "I don't know what happened to me. I couldn't stop seeing it. The resemblance. And once it was in my head, I couldn't get it out. It messed me up." I stared at him, waiting. "I wasn't myself," he added weakly. "No," I said. "You were exactly yourself. That's the problem." He looked up at me, his expression suddenly crumbling. I didn't want to believe it. But it was eating me alive. I was terrified that everything we built was a lie. That James wasn't really mine. That you, he stopped himself. That I what? I pressed. That you didn't love me. That you'd rather be with someone else. Someone like Chris. I sat there for a second. Processing. "Matt, if you'd come to me and told me you were scared, I would have held you. I would have walked through that fear with you. But instead, you accused me. You looked me in the eye and doubted my loyalty, my love, and my entire character. And then you shut me out. You didn't ask. You decided." He didn't respond right away. Just stared at the floor, eyes glazed. I felt this tightness in my chest, like I was holding something in, something big, and it was about to boil over. I spent the last few weeks holding our newborn son and wondering if I was going to end up a single mom. I thought the hardest part of becoming a parent would be the sleepless nights, the feedings, the recovery. But no. The hardest part was doing it without you, because you were right there, but it felt like you were already gone. That got him. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and his eyes were glossy with tears. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I was scared, and I messed up. I don't know how to fix this, but I want to. I want to be the man you married. I want to be the father James deserves." And for the first time since this all began, I didn't have an answer. Because even though I knew I still loved him, I also knew something had cracked between us. Something fundamental. And cracks like that don't just vanish. They need time. Effort. Honesty. We agreed to start counseling. We agreed to take it slow. But things still feel fragile. He's trying, he makes breakfast now, takes James on walks to give me breaks, reads baby books like a student cramming for an exam. And sometimes I catch him staring at our son with this mixture of awe and guilt that breaks my heart all over again. Chris still doesn't know what happened. I haven't told him. Matt says he wants to keep it that way, that it was all in his head, and he doesn't want to damage a friendship over something that never existed. I'm not so sure. Because trust, once it's cracked, doesn't just repair itself. And silence can feel just as loud as accusations. There's more I need to say, but I'm not ready. Not yet. All I know is, I'm doing everything I can to love my son, stay afloat, and figure out if our marriage still has enough left to rebuild. The hardest part isn't the silence. It's pretending. Pretending things are fine when they're not. Smiling for pictures with our newborn, when my husband's arms are stiff around me. Posting new parent updates on social media, while inside I'm still unraveling. People comment how lucky I am, how beautiful James is, how happy we look. And sometimes, even I almost believe it. Matt's trying, in his own awkward, heavy-footed way. Every night he reads to James, even though the baby is too young to understand. He makes coffee in the morning, adds a splash of vanilla almond milk the way I like it, sets it down next to me without saying a word. There's this effort in everything he does, like he's trying to rebuild a bridge with one hand tied behind his back. But effort isn't always enough. Last week, Chris stopped by. He hadn't been over in a while, probably because Matt had been dodging him like a middle schooler avoiding a crush. But Chris texted me this time. Said he missed James and wanted to drop off something for the baby. I didn't have the heart to say no. So he came. With a tiny onesie that said Dad's Sidekick in comic book letters. I knew the second Matt saw it, it would hit a nerve, but I was too tired to care. Chris was his usual self, warm, relaxed, holding James like he'd done it a million times. His wife had just started a new job, and they were juggling parenthood too, so we talked about sleepless nights and formula brands and diaper explosions. When Matt came in halfway through the visit, everything changed. He froze. His eyes locked on James in Chris's arms, and I could almost hear his breath hitch. He tried to play it cool, but his posture was all wrong, tense, shoulders tight, barely blinking. Chris didn't notice at first. But I did. I watched the man I married shrink into himself. Not because of Chris, but because of his own unresolved guilt. The visit was short. When Chris left, Matt barely said goodbye. He just went out to the garage like he suddenly remembered he had 100 things to do. I stayed in the living room, James snoozing on my chest, and stared at the door for a long time. Later that night, I found Matt standing in the laundry room, just standing there. The dryer wasn't on. He wasn't folding anything. Just holding one of James's little socks in his hand like it might give him an answer he couldn't find anywhere else. "Do you still love me?" he asked, out of nowhere. I didn't answer right away. "Because I don't feel like you do anymore," he said. "I feel like I ruined everything." And maybe I did. I walked in slowly and leaned against the doorframe. "I don't know what I feel," I admitted. "Some days I look at you and I remember the man who held my hand through every contraction, who told me I was strong when I felt like I was falling apart, who kissed my forehead and said, 'We're almost there.' I miss that man." He looked down, swallowing hard. "And other days," I continued, "I remember you accusing me. Looking at me like I was someone else. Someone you couldn't trust. Someone who would throw away everything we built, just like that. And that hurts more than I can explain." He closed his eyes. "I know I broke something. I know sorry doesn't fix it." "No," I said. "But showing up does." We stood there in silence for a moment. No yelling. No drama. Just quiet. A day later, Chris texted me again. He wrote, "Hey, this might be weird, but did something happen between me and Matt? I feel like I did something wrong." I stared at that message for 10 minutes. And then I told him the truth. Not all of it, but enough. I said Matt had been going through something. That he'd had doubts. That he'd confused resemblance with reality. And that it had nothing to do with anything Chris had done. I told him I was sorry for the weird tension and that I hoped it would pass. He called me. Right away. "Wait," Chris said, his voice careful. "Matt thought I was the father?" I hesitated. It was complicated. But yeah. Chris was quiet for a long moment. Then, in the calmest voice I've ever heard, he said, "That hurts, man. I've known him for almost 20 years. "I know," I whispered. "But I'm not mad at you," he added. "I'm just sad that he could think that about both of us. So now there's more fallout. Matt knows I told Chris. And he's not thrilled. But I told him I wasn't going to protect his insecurities at the expense of people who've always been kind to me. I told him if he wanted to heal things with me, he had to start healing things with himself first. And for the first time in weeks, he didn't argue. He nodded. "We've started counseling. It's slow. Raw. Sometimes we leave more upset than when we went in. But there's progress. Honest conversations. Real apologies. Small wins. James is growing. Smiling more. He reaches for Matt now, and I see something in Matt's face crack open a little every time. Maybe it's healing. Maybe it's guilt. Maybe it's both. I don't know where this story ends yet. I wish I did. But I'm here. We're both here. Trying. Forgiveness isn't some magical line you cross. It's 1,000 tiny decisions, every day, to keep showing up. It's letting your husband hold your hand during a pediatrician appointment, even though part of you still flinches when he touches you. It's watching him fall asleep on the couch with James on his chest, hearing your baby's soft snore in rhythm with his, and letting yourself feel something close to hope, even if it only lasts for a second. Some days, I look at Matt and I see the man I married. Other days, I see the man who accused me of cheating without proof, who let a moment of doubt shatter something that took years to build. But the one thing that's consistent is James. Our son. The only person in the entire situation who didn't ask for any of this and yet has changed everything. His laugh, his tiny fingers gripping mine, the way his eyes follow me across the room like I'm the only thing that exists, those are the moments that keep me going. A few weeks after the paternity test came back, Matt did something I didn't expect. He called Chris. He didn't tell me beforehand. I only found out when I overheard part of the conversation from the hallway. I stood there, holding a warm bottle, half hidden behind the door, listening to my husband fumble through an apology that was more raw and real than anything I'd heard from him in months. I messed up, man. I don't even have a good excuse. My head wasn't right. I let this idea take over, and I couldn't let it go. And I should have known better. About her. About you. About all of it. There was a long pause. I couldn't hear Chris's voice, just the silence that followed. Then Matt said quietly, I get it if you don't want to be friends anymore. I wouldn't blame you. That silence stretched. But eventually, Matt nodded and said, thanks, before hanging up. I stepped back into the nursery like I hadn't just been eavesdropping on one of the most emotionally honest things my husband had done in a long time. Later that night, I asked him how it went. He looked drained, like he'd run a marathon. He forgave me, Matt said. Said he needed some space, but he forgave me. I nodded. That was all I said. But deep down, a part of me softened just a little. We kept going to counseling. It wasn't easy. We dug up old stuff I didn't even realize I was still holding on to. Like how he froze up after my miscarriage last year, or how I'd always been the one to smooth things over after a fight. Meanwhile, he opened up about the fear that came with fatherhood, not just the responsibility, but the fear of losing everything, of not being enough, of being left behind. That's what it really was, he said in one session. It wasn't that I thought you'd cheat. It was that deep down, I didn't think I was enough for you. I should have felt relief, hearing that. But all I could think was, you still made that my burden to carry. That's the thing people don't always understand, even when you know someone's behavior came from their own wounds or fears, it doesn't erase the pain they caused. Understanding isn't the same as healing. But we kept showing up. One night, about a month after everything came out, we sat together on the porch after putting James down. It was quiet, just the hum of a warm breeze and the distant sound of someone's backyard wind chime. Matt handed me a folded note. I opened it, expecting a card or maybe a poem he'd found online, trying to be sweet. But instead, it was a list. Handwritten, in his uneven blocky print. I didn't say anything. I just reached for his hand and held it in both of mine. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was holding on alone. We're still rebuilding. Still navigating the awkwardness, the doubts, the careful steps of people trying to fall back in love with each other. Or maybe rediscover the love that never fully left. It's slow. It's messy. But it's real. A few nights ago, James woke up crying at 2:30 in the morning. I was half awake, ready to roll out of bed, but Matt was already standing up, pulling on a sweatshirt. I got him, he said softly, and kissed my forehead before slipping into the hallway. And I laid there, listening to him hum gently through the baby monitor, watching the sound waves rise and fall like a lullaby. I didn't cry. But I did feel something close to peace. The first time I laughed again, really laughed, was over something stupid. James was maybe 7 weeks old, and I was bouncing him on my hip while trying to make pancakes one-handed. I hadn't slept more than 3 hours in a row in days. My hair was a mess. There was a spit-up stain on my shoulder I didn't even bother trying to clean. And then Matt walked into the kitchen wearing one of those ridiculous baby carrier backpacks, with our cat zipped into it. The cat looked mildly betrayed. Matt looked proud of himself. And I laughed so hard I nearly dropped the pancake batter. He laughed too, finally. And it wasn't forced. It wasn't one of those tight, polite smiles we'd been faking for weeks. It was real. It felt like the old us, even if just for a moment. And I needed that more than I realized. That moment, as silly as it was, cracked something open. Afterward, we sat down on the floor with James between us and talked about how things used to be. The road trips. The late-night pizza runs. That first awful apartment with the broken heater. It felt like remembering another life, one we both still missed. We were quiet for a while after that. Then Matt asked, "Do you think we can ever get back there?" And I said something I hadn't fully believed until that moment, maybe not back, but maybe somewhere new. And that's the truth. There's no going back to what we were before the paternity test. Before the doubt. Before the damage. But maybe we can build something new, something stronger because of what we've survived, not in spite of it. A few days later, Matt surprised me. He'd booked us a session with a family photographer. Nothing fancy, just someone local who specialized in newborn sessions. At first, I didn't want to do it. The idea of standing in front of a camera, pretending to be this perfect family, made my skin crawl. But then he showed me the message he'd sent the photographer. It read, "We're not perfect. We're trying. We want something that shows where we are, messy, tired, still in love, still figuring it out." So we went. And somehow, that hour with the photographer felt like therapy. She didn't pose us stiffly or try to make James smile. She just told us to hold him, talk to each other, move like we normally would. And when she showed us a preview photo, Matt holding James, forehead pressed gently against mine, I saw something I hadn't seen in weeks. Warmth. Connection. Us. After the shoot, we grabbed coffee while James napped in his car seat. We sat in the parking lot, sipping quietly. Matt turned to me and said, "You know what scared me most?" I looked at him, waiting. That he wouldn't look like me, and I'd love him a little less for it. It was the most honest thing he'd said since the day James was born. I didn't speak for a second. I just reached over and touched his hand. "You know what scared me most?" I said. "That you'd stop loving me because of something I couldn't control." He nodded slowly. "I almost did. And I hate that. I hate that I let fear talk louder than love." There were no dramatic speeches. No swelling music. Just two people, sitting in a quiet car, finally telling the truth. I still have days where I feel the aftershocks. Where a comment or a look triggers that wave of sadness all over again. And I know he does too. Healing isn't linear. Trust doesn't just snap back into place like nothing happened. But we keep trying. We check in with each other now, small questions like "How's your heart today?" Or "Are we okay this week?" We write each other notes, silly ones sometimes. Matt started sticking post-its on the fridge that say things like "Still can't believe you're James's mom" and "Sorry for being a bonehead." I love you. It's not about grand gestures anymore. It's about consistency. James started smiling last week, those big gummy smiles that light up his whole face. And every time he grins, Matt melts. I watch him fall deeper in love with his son every single day. The same son he once questioned. And I don't say that to be cruel, I say it because it matters. Because growth matters. Because we matter. We've still got a long road ahead. And maybe there'll be more setbacks. More hard talks. More nights where one of us sleeps on the couch, not out of anger, but just to breathe. But I believe in this family. I believe in the man who doubted and came back anyway. And I believe in the version of us that chooses each other, even after the worst storm. There's a moment I go back to sometimes, one that probably sounds small to anyone else, but it meant everything to me. James was crying, again, and nothing seemed to help. I'd rocked him, nursed him, changed him, sang to him. My arms were sore, my back was aching, and I could feel that familiar weight pressing in on my chest, the one that tells you you're about to break, but you don't want to admit it out loud. I was on the verge of tears when Matt walked in from work, saw my face, and didn't say a word. He just walked over, kissed the top of my head, and took James from my arms like he'd been waiting his whole life to do it. He didn't ask what was wrong. He didn't offer advice. He just whispered to our son, "Let's give Mom a break, huh?" And in that one moment, I didn't feel alone anymore. That's what rebuilding has looked like for us, not fireworks, not huge declarations, just quiet acts of showing up when it counts. It's been about 3 months since the paternity test. James is growing fast, and, yes, Matt's features are starting to show up more clearly. He's got Matt's dimples when he yawns, and the same cowlick on the right side of his head. We joke about it now. Lightly. Carefully. Like testing ice that used to be too thin to stand on. But the jokes mean something. They mean we're not walking on eggshells anymore. Chris came over last weekend. For the first time in over 2 months. He brought his daughter, who's just a little older than James. It was awkward at first, the kind of awkward where no one really knows where to start. But Chris being Chris, he broke the tension within 5 minutes. "So," he said, bouncing his daughter on his knee while looking directly at Matt, "you still think this little guy's my clone?" Matt choked on his coffee. "But then, and I still don't know how," he laughed. "I think I was a paranoid idiot." Chris grinned. "Yeah, you were. But hey, at least he's cute." We all laughed, and something clicked back into place after that. Not all the way, but enough to feel like maybe the friendship wasn't completely lost. That night, Matt sat beside me in bed and said, "I don't deserve how patient you've been." And I told him the truth. It wasn't patience. It was survival. I did what I had to do for our son. For me. He nodded, eyes focused on the baby monitor. I still have to earn back your trust, don't I? You do, I said. But you're on your way. There's a scar between us now. I won't pretend there isn't. It runs beneath the surface of every soft moment. It whispers during quiet drives and when the house is dark and James is finally asleep. But the scar doesn't throb the way it used to. It doesn't bleed anymore. It's just there. A reminder of what we survived. Sometimes, I lie awake beside him and wonder what would have happened if the results had taken longer. If James had looked even a little more like Chris. If I hadn't pushed for the truth that night when Matt first hinted at his doubts. Would we have made it? Would Matt have confessed on his own, or would he have let the suspicion rot him from the inside out? I don't know. And honestly, I don't need to know anymore. What I do know is this: Matt holds James differently now. He's not careful or tentative. He's not measuring resemblance or watching for signs. He's his dad. Fully. Instinctively. Without hesitation. And when I see that, I let myself breathe again. We've started making plans for the future. A real nursery. A trip to visit my parents. Talking about what school district we want to be in someday. We still go to counseling. Some sessions are lighthearted. Others are brutally hard. But we go. Because we made a promise, not just to each other, but to the little boy asleep in the next room. A promise that love doesn't quit at the first sign of fear. And maybe, just maybe, we're learning how to keep that promise. 3 months ago, I thought my marriage was over. I was lying in bed with our newborn asleep in the bassinet beside me, and my husband, the man who'd once whispered baby names to my belly and kissed my feet swollen from pregnancy, was sleeping on the couch, convinced our child wasn't his. And now, here we are. Last night, we celebrated James turning 3 months old. Nothing huge, just dinner on the patio, fairy lights overhead, baby monitor on the table. Matt grilled steaks. I made that lemon orzo salad he loves. James gurgled and kicked in his bouncer while we sat next to each other like two people who'd just rediscovered each other. Matt gave me a small box. Inside was a necklace, a delicate gold chain with a tiny J charm. He didn't say anything at first, just waited. And then, with that half-smile I haven't seen in a while, he said, I didn't get it because I want to say sorry again. I got it because you're his mother. And you never doubted it, even when I did. I didn't cry. I thought I would. But I didn't. I just reached over, took his hand, and said, we're different now. He nodded. Yeah. But maybe better. The truth is, we're not the couple we used to be. That version of us, the pre-baby, pre-doubt, pre-paternity test version, is gone. And for a while, I grieved that. I missed the simplicity, the certainty, the way we never questioned the foundation under us. But now? I'm starting to see something else in its place. We're not perfect. Far from it. But we're honest in a way we weren't before. We check in more. We name our fears instead of letting them grow in the dark. We've stopped pretending we're immune to pain just because we love each other. That illusion nearly cost us everything. Matt still struggles with guilt. I can see it in how he overcompensates, volunteering for every night feeding, ordering parenting books, making sure James always has the softest swaddle blankets on earth. But he also laughs again. He plays peekaboo like a total dork. He talks to James like he's an old friend. And James? He looks at his father like he hung the moon. Sometimes I watch them together, Matt tossing him gently in the air, James squealing, and I think, this is what it was all for. The fight. The tears. The counseling. The heartbreak. It brought us here. The people who know us, really know us, still don't know the whole story. And I don't think they ever will. Some things don't need to be shared to be healed. They just need to be honored. Quietly. Truthfully. Between the people who lived them. Chris and his wife came over last weekend. We grilled, the babies napped in shifts, and for the first time, I felt like we were all just normal. No tension. No undercurrent of doubt. Just friends, food, and tired parents trading diaper rash remedies like war stories. When they left, Matt said, I forgot how nice that feels, peace. And I smiled, because I had too. We're still healing. I won't pretend we've wrapped this all up with a perfect bow. Sometimes I still flinch at old memories. Sometimes Matt gets quiet and lost in his head. But we talk now. We really talk. That might be the biggest change of all. We don't look at each other like we used to. We look at each other like we chose each other, again, knowing everything. And maybe that's worth even more. So, here's where our story ends, for now, in a messy, beautiful, imperfect home, with a baby who looks more like his dad every day, and two people learning how to love each other the way they actually are, not the way they used to be. I don't need everything to be perfect anymore. I just need it to be real. And finally, it is.